The term ascension has become increasingly more popular as more individuals are having spiritual awakenings. So today I'm going to be explaining what ascension is and what that term means. How the ascension process has been depicted throughout the ages is of an upward trajectory, almost as if a levitation into a heavenly realm. And so that served us at one point. But as we're coming into a more mature form of these esoteric concepts, what ascension truly is the awareness of our conscious evolution. When we are aware that we are evolving, that is the ascension process in a nutshell. So to further expand on that definition of ascension being the conscious awareness of our own evolution, ascension is the journey from base consciousness to unity consciousness. Unity consciousness is a property of the fifth dimension. So when we're talking about the ascension process, we're actually anchoring into the physical third dimension, higher dimensional states of consciousness. These higher dimensional states of consciousness, we could just say fifth dimensional consciousness and beyond. But what these fifth dimensional and beyond states of consciousness do once they're anchored into the third dimensional reality, they create a complete paradigm shift to this version of reality. So we're still inside a third dimensional form, but with a multidimensional consciousness. And what this multidimensional consciousness is going to do over a long incremental period of time is shift dimensions. When we are going to experience a complete dimensional shift depends solely on what timeline we are on. Because if we're looking for collective outcomes to produce that dimensional shift, it's going to take a longer amount of time. If we focus on our own experience, we're going to catch a wave to a timeline that's going to have things just synchronistically appear in such a manner that a dimensional shift is far more probable within this lifetime. However, looking at things from them needing to occur in this lifetime is also a hindering factor. And that's one that's not going to totally allow us to align with the timeline where that actually would be the case. So a large theme inside the ascension process is the transmutation of our physical body into a more crystalline structure. This is going to be a transmutation process taking place at a cellular level, even at a mitochondria level. And what this is doing is it's transmuting the density inside our physical structure into a higher vibrating structure vehicle. If you'd specifically like to know more about the physical structure of ascension, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video explaining cellular debris, cellular miasms, and karmic imprints. A lot of times the terms the higher self and ascension go hand in hand. The higher self can be looked at as the multidimensional version of us. And so ascension can also be looked at as the embodiment in the physical of the multidimensional version of ourselves. So it would be the embodiment of our higher self. As you can imagine, embodying your higher self is quite the tall order. So that's why healing and spiritual awakening are terms that go hand in hand. Because in order to embody our multidimensional self or our higher self, we would have to go through a healing journey. And so the term healing and the term spiritual awakening are inextricably linked. They're one and the same. You cannot have a spiritual awakening journey without a healing journey, because the journey of healing is what creates the multidimensional version of ourselves. So as we're transmuting the physical vessel, we're also allowing ourselves to embody more of our multidimensional frequencies. Ultimately, ascension is we become our higher self in the physical third dimensional form. Becoming our higher self is also integrating God consciousness, because when you become your higher self, when you anchor multidimensional frequencies, you are no longer separate from this concept of source or God. You have become the expression of this source consciousness experiencing itself through your avatar. And that is a completely different type of paradigm than viewing yourself as a portion or an aspect of source. And so one could say that, yeah, we are a portion of source, but ascension is becoming all of source. So ascension means rather than going from thinking that we are a portion of source or a child of God, that we are actually God incarnate. And because that's such an important and powerful paradigm shift, a collective that has shifted into that paradigm where they're now operating as their multidimensional version in their third dimensional human is something that you can imagine won't happen overnight, but that we are, without a doubt, in the thickets of that experience. There are timelines that quicken this ascension process, and there are timelines that slow this ascension process down for the individual. One of the ways that this ascension process gets slowed down is by thinking that the entire collective all needs to shift and come to a state of spiritual awakening and awareness, the way that we individually are coming into that state of awareness and enlightenment. You cannot expect everyone to choose enlightenment. Because this is a multidimensional experience, we're actually shifting timelines all the time without even becoming aware of it. So what's going to be happening really on this ascension process is you're just going to be shifting timelines until you're eventually on a timeline with people who can only hold the frequency that you are in. Eventually, you're not going to even be able to be in an experience where there is so much of a rift in frequency. You're going to get to a point where there is such a chasm within the frequency bandwidth that you can't even perceive one another. So everything vibrates within a specific bandwidth of frequency. And that bandwidth of frequency is a dimension. And there's certain properties within each dimension. So when we go through the ascension process, we're shifting into higher bandwidths of frequency. However, what I can guarantee is that if you have a deadline for this ascension process, you are already in some form of aversion to the third dimension. And being in aversion to the third dimensional experience is going to create a timeline that's far slower. So what we need to see is the enlightenment of the multidimensional self embodied into the physical that has such complete and total harmony with this experience that you don't care whether you're coming or going. You're not concerned about a time frame. You're not concerned about the whole entire world being on board with your agenda. You're not concerned with getting off this planet as fast as you can. You're not concerned with saving your loved ones because they don't believe the same thing as you. It comes a spiritual maturity. And one of the aspects of the spiritual maturity that we step into through the ascension process, we have purpose, but not attachment. We still practice discernment and are proactive, but we're also able to go with the flow. Ascension windows open every 24 to 25,000 years. And so Earth is ascending. Gaia is ascending. That choice has already been made. Whatever takes Earth's place, that will be a new planet. And one of the main ways a being can align with Gaia's ascension is by understanding that all of the different ways that we perceive destruction in the external world are actually the byproduct of unconsciousness. And what I mean by that is, if, for instance, we are putting all of our energy into collecting resources that are, because we're prepping for a doomsday, we're pretty much banking on there being some sort of external destruction around us. And we're not investing in the internal destruction that needs to happen in order for us to heal. And we're not putting enough energy and resources into aligning with a timeline where Gaia is experiencing an ascension. So instead, what people are doing when they're putting a lot of energy into fear-oriented storylines and narratives is they're investing in that timeline. They're actually strengthening their resonance with timelines where there is going to be doomsday destruction, rather than allowing themselves to go internally through their own inner doom, heal and integrate their own inner doom, and then transition their consciousness from that base level of fear, humanity, external threat, doom, to sovereignty, enlightenment, spiritual unity, healing. So although the ascension process is absolutely going to bring up a lot of doom within the individual and within the external, as trite as it might sound, you have the expression of fear and you have the expression of love. And the expression of love is one of expansiveness in this case for ascension. And the expression of fear in this case is one of constriction. So although there is a natural expansion and contraction that happens as we're evolving and as we're becoming aware of our own conscious evolution, aka ascension, when we are in fear, we're contracting so much to the degree that we're not able to expand sufficiently enough and expand wide enough in order to actually embody multidimensional consciousness. So you would have that look something like contract, contract, expand, contract, 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 expand, contract, contract, contract. You see, that's not sufficient enough expansion in order to have a higher dimensional consciousness. However, with spiritual awakening and with the ascension, you have expand, expand, contract, expand, 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 contract, contract, expand, expand, contract, expand, expand, expand. So you see the different rhythm in that versus the rhythm of contract, contract, contract. When you contract so much into fear, you cannot ascend or expand sufficiently enough to embody ascension. This does not at all imply nor mean that you have to become fearless. That's not even a possibility. What this means is that we bring love into our fear, we become aware of our fear, we allow that to be used as a fuel for our expansion. So it's this fine-tuned incremental degree into more and more openness, more and more love. It's a scary process to ascend. It's not all cupcakes and rainbow. It's absolutely fine that we're going to experience fear. But I want you to truly understand the difference between fear, 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 to the extent that my consciousness has become so disconnected from my true source consciousness that I view myself as a child human who is entirely dependent on external forces, versus a spiritual sovereign who, oh my God, I have a new layer of fear come up. Oh wow, I'm going to become aware of that. I'm going to integrate it. I'm going to give it love. I'm going to give it the light of my awareness. And now I'm expanding again. Oh, I have more fear that came up. Wow, that's because I expanded so much that I'm in a new territory. This is scary. So you see, there's still always going to be fear involved. But when you become a friend to your fear and you're able to allow it to inform you so that you're in open dialogue with it, it's one, not going to rule your life. It's not going to last as long. And it's going to be able to be a part of your feedback loop of information, because that's what emotions are. So you're allowing it to be incorporated into your learning process and into your evolution, rather than allowing it to be in control and in the driver's seat. So the other term that goes hand in hand with the ascension process is light. And we know in the spiritual community how important of a force light is, kind of goes without saying. However, what I'm going to be talking about today regarding light is its hidden esoteric meaning. So we embody more light in the ascension process, and we transmute our carbon DNA into crystalline. So there's this strong emphasis on light. Well, what light is, for specifically the ascension process, is you need to become light in order to go higher. What this really means is you can't be heavy. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not talking about light as the structure as we know it right now. I'm talking about literally light baggage, light as a feather. You embody more light, meaning you are not so attached. Attachments are heavy. Certain emotional states are heavier than other emotional states. And that's not saying anything against them. This is just, it is what it is. In order to ascend, you have to literally go through the healing process so as to transmute your body-mind connection, your psyche, so that they are not as heavy, so as to become more light. And that's what light truly means regarding the ascension process. And as you can imagine, being more light means holding a higher frequency, means vibrating faster. So that's how you raise your vibration. It's through the healing journey that is provoked by the spiritual awakening that is all a part of the ascension process. I hope this has helped you become more light. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for more higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakenings. See you next time.